My parents made me raise all my siblings. From age 6, while they collected government money for fake childcare, so when I tried to escape for college, they called CPS on me, but their own lies became the trap that destroyed them. In my family, the eldest daughter was expected to raise every child born after her. Not help with, not babysit, but become their actual mother from the moment they arrived home from the hospital. I changed my first diaper when I was 6 years old. You see, my mother was a former teen mom who treated pregnancy like catching a cold, something that just happened to you. My father worked construction, but somehow his paychecks always disappeared into new tools or nights at the bar. They both came from huge families where this was just how things worked. By the time I was 8, I had 3 siblings under my care. My parents would leave for their date nights while I heated bottles and rocked crying babies. Soon you'll get married and pass the burden on to someone else, my mother would say each time she announced another pregnancy, her eyes landing on me like I was hired help. Fast forward 8 years later, when I turned 14, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table with this formal announcement. She was pregnant again. Nothing new. Except this time, she handed me a notebook labeled Household Schedule, with my name listed as primary caregiver from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. You're old enough to handle night feedings alone now, she said. My father nodded from his recliner. We canceled your after-school activities. Family comes first. The worst part was when they told me I'd need to get a work permit to buy diapers because they couldn't afford extras. They called it giving me real-world experience. This is what love looks like in our culture, they said. You're so much better with them than we are. My days started at 5:30 a.m., making breakfast for 4 kids while my parents slept in. I fell asleep during a parent-teacher conference once, and my parents told everyone I must be partying. The youngest started calling me mama at the grocery store, and people would give us looks. Then came the breaking point. I'd worked so hard to get a full academic scholarship to my dream college. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. For once, I wasn't an underage mother. I was just Lisa, a normal girl, going to a normal college. I was in the middle of happy tears when my mother walked in. "I'm pregnant," she yelled. My face dropped. It was twins. That was the same week that my dad decided to be even more neglectful than usual. I had to be the one to hold my mom's hair when she vomited, to massage her feet, to fix her pregnancy cravings, all while taking care of the kids. The counselor called the next week saying I needed to submit final paperwork by 3 p.m. The baby got sick and wouldn't stop screaming. I missed the deadline by 10 minutes. The scholarship was withdrawn for lack of commitment. My parents said college would have been selfish anyway. I started planning my escape in secret, applied to community college and got accepted, got a part-time job at a grocery store and hid my money in a tampon box. My 16-year-old sister Sarah found out but promised to keep quiet. For once, everything was going according to plan. Until my parents found the acceptance letter I'd hidden in my chemistry textbook. My mother cried about all their sacrifices. My father threatened to kick me out if I abandoned the family. I didn't say a word. And the next day, I came home from work to find the house riddled with social workers. Apparently, my parents told them I was the neglectful caregiver who was supposed to be watching everyone. The social worker saw through it, but gave me an impossible choice. Either I stayed as the primary caregiver or my siblings would go into foster care. My parents stood there smirking like they'd won, but I had an ace up my sleeve. Sarah had been recording them on her phone for weeks. The social worker, Ms. Johnson, pulled out her clipboard and started asking questions while my parents stood there with their arms crossed. Sarah slipped her phone into my hand behind her back. I felt the weight of it like a lifeline. "These recordings," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "They show everything." My mother's face went white. My father stepped forward, grabbing for the phone, but Ms. Johnson held up her hand. "Let's all stay calm. Lisa, can you show me what you have?" I played the first recording. My mother's voice filled the room, clear as day. "Lisa needs to understand her place. She's the oldest girl. This is her job until she gets married and has her own eldest daughter to take over." My father's voice followed. "If she thinks she's going to college instead of raising these kids, she's got another thing coming. We'll make sure of that." The room went silent. My parents exchanged panicked looks. Then my mother did what she always did when cornered. She started crying. "That's taken out of context," she wailed. "Lisa must have edited it with one of those apps. Kids these days can fake anything with technology." My father jumped on that immediately. "She's been unstable lately, talking about abandoning the family. She probably made this up to get attention." Ms. Johnson looked between us, her expression unreadable. "These are serious allegations. We'll need to verify the authenticity of these recordings." "Call Derek," my mother said suddenly. "My nephew Derek works in IT. He can prove these are fake." Within an hour, cousin Derek arrived with his laptop. He was 25 and had always been the family's go-to for computer problems. He listened to the recordings, typed on his computer, then looked up at Ms. Johnson. "Audio manipulation is incredibly easy these days," he said. "There are dozens of apps that can splice conversations together. Without the original files and metadata, there's no way to prove these are real." Sarah's face fell. I felt my heart sink. Of course the family would protect each other. That's what they always did. Ms. Johnson made notes on her clipboard. "I'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, the children will remain in the home under the current arrangement." After she left, my parents' masks dropped completely. My mother grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "You think you're so smart? We're calling a family meeting. Let's see what Grandma Helen thinks about you trying to destroy this family." The next morning, our house filled with relatives. Grandma Helen sat in the living room like a queen holding court. She was my mother's mother, the matriarch who had raised 12 children and believed suffering built character. "I hear you've been making trouble," she said when she saw me, "recording your parents like some kind of spy. In my day, children who disrespected their elders got the belt." My aunts nodded in agreement. Uncle Tony, the lawyer, sat beside her taking notes. My mother had already called him about representing them if things escalated. "Lisa's always been difficult," my mother said, dabbing at her eyes. "We've tried everything. We even found a counselor friend who's been documenting her behavior issues." She produced a folder full of papers. I recognized the letterhead from Mrs. Patterson's counseling practice. She and my mother had gone to high school together. The papers claimed I showed signs of severe attachment disorder, oppositional defiance, and pathological lying. These are fake, I protested, but Grandma Helen silenced me with a look. Children who won't fulfill their family duties are sick in the head, she declared. Your mother did her duty. I did mine. Every woman in this family has done theirs. You think you're special? The family split into camps over the next few days. A few cousins privately told me they understood, but none would speak up publicly. Most sided with my parents. Family tradition was sacred. Breaking it meant betraying everything they stood for. My parents filed paperwork with the court claiming I was mentally unstable and had been turning the younger children against them. They wanted emergency custody formally transferred to them with me barred from any caretaking roles. The irony wasn't lost on me. You're going to regret this, my father said that night. We've given you everything. A roof over your head, food, a purpose, and this is how you repay us? The locks were changed the next morning. I came home from my shift at the grocery store to find my key didn't work. My clothes were in garbage bags on the lawn. The restraining order was taped to the front door. They'd claimed I'd threatened them during the family meeting. Sarah watched from her bedroom window, tears streaming down her face. She held up her phone, mouthing, "I'm recording." But what good would that do when the whole family was against us? I slept in my car that night, parked behind the grocery store. My manager found me the next morning when he came to open up. I begged him not to say anything. I needed this job more than ever now. But word traveled fast in our small town. By the end of the week, 3 of my father's construction crew buddies had come by the store. They didn't say anything directly, just stood in my checkout line, buying single items, making comments about ungrateful children who didn't appreciate their parents' sacrifices. My manager called me into his office the next day. "I'm sorry, Lisa, but we've been getting complaints. Customers say you seem distracted, that you're making mistakes. With everything going on, maybe it's best if you take some time off." "Please," I begged. "I need this job. I don't have anywhere else to go." He looked uncomfortable. "It's just temporary, until things settle down with your family situation." But we both knew it wasn't temporary. In a small town where my father's crew did half the construction work, crossing him meant consequences. I spent the next 2 nights in my car before the women's shelter finally had a bed. The intake worker looked at my restraining order and frowned. "Your parents filed this? Against their own daughter?" I nodded, too exhausted to explain. The shelter was loud and crowded, but it was better than my car. I had a bed, a locker for my things, and access to a shower. I could figure out the rest later. The family court hearing was set for the following week. My parents had Uncle Tony representing them pro bono. I had no one. Legal aid said I didn't qualify since technically I wasn't the one seeking custody. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best clothes, wrinkled from being stored in my car. Sarah texted me, "They've been coaching the kids all week. I'm sorry." I walked into the courtroom to find my parents looking like model citizens. My mother wore a conservative dress, my father a suit I'd never seen before. They'd brought character witnesses from their jobs. My mother's supervisor from the dental office where she worked part-time. My father's foreman. Even Mrs. Patterson was there with her fake therapy notes. "Your Honor," Uncle Tony began, "my clients are hardworking parents doing their best with a troubled teenager. Lisa has always had difficulty accepting authority. These recordings she claims to have are clearly fabricated, as our IT expert will testify." Derek took the stand and repeated his claims about audio manipulation. He showed the judge examples of apps that could create fake conversations. He was smooth, professional, believable. Then my parents testified. They painted a picture of a rebellious daughter who resented having younger siblings, who made up stories for attention, who had threatened to destroy the family if she didn't get her way. "We love all our children equally," my mother said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "But Lisa has always been different, difficult. We've tried so hard to help her." When it was my turn to speak, I felt like I was drowning. Every word I said sounded weak compared to their prepared statements. I tried to explain about the years of caretaking, the missed opportunities, the parentification, but without proof, it was my word against theirs. "Where are these recordings now?" the judge asked. "My sister has them," I said. "Sarah, she's been documenting everything." "Your 16-year-old sister?" The judge looked skeptical. "The one your parents claim you've been manipulating?" Sarah was called to testify. She walked in looking smaller than usual, her hands shaking. Our parents stared at her from their table. Uncle Tony smiled at her like a shark. "Sarah," he began gently, "has your sister Lisa been asking you to record your parents?" Sarah glanced at me, then at our parents. She didn't ask me to. I did it on my own. But she knew about it? She encouraged it? Sarah's voice cracked. "I just wanted to help." "Of course you did. You love your sister. But sometimes people we love can lead us astray. Has Lisa been telling you stories about your parents? Making you see things differently?" I watched Sarah crumble under the questioning. Our parents had gotten to her, threatened her, made her doubt herself. By the time Uncle Tony was done, it looked like I'd masterminded some elaborate scheme to turn my siblings against their loving parents. The judge looked troubled but seemed to be buying it. I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, was being twisted into evidence against me. That's when Ms. Johnson stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to present some additional findings from my investigation." She pulled out a thick manila folder and approached the bench. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Uncle Tony's confident smile faltered slightly. "During my investigation, I discovered some concerning financial discrepancies," Ms. Johnson said, her voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Martinez has been collecting government assistance for childcare services for the past 8 years." My mother's face went pale. My father gripped the edge of the table. "The applications state that she requires childcare assistance due to her work schedule at the dental office. However, my investigation revealed that Lisa has been the primary caregiver during all the hours covered by this assistance." Uncle Tony jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is clearly a misunderstanding. My client may have made some clerical errors that total over $20,000 in fraudulent claims," Ms. Johnson Johnson interrupted. She produced photocopies of the applications, each one signed by Mrs. Martinez, claiming she was paying for professional childcare services. The judge leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Ms. Johnson, are you suggesting welfare fraud? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Your Honor. Furthermore, Mr. Martinez has been claiming Lisa as a dependent on his taxes, while simultaneously requiring her to work to support the household. He's been collecting child tax credits for a child who was functioning as an unpaid nanny and contributing financially to the family. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. This is ridiculous. We've supported Lisa her entire life. Sit down, Mr. Martinez, the judge ordered sharply. Ms. Johnson, do you have documentation to support these claims? Ms. Johnson nodded and handed over more papers. Bank records showing deposits from government assistance programs, tax returns showing dependent claims, and most tellingly, security footage from the benefits office showing Mrs. Martinez signing these applications herself. My mother started sobbing loudly, not the calculated tears from earlier, but genuine panic. We were just trying to make ends meet. Construction work is seasonal. We needed help. Then why force your daughter to provide free childcare while collecting money meant to pay for that exact service? The judge asked. Uncle Tony tried to salvage the situation. Your Honor, even if there were some financial irregularities, that doesn't negate the fact that Lisa has been exhibiting concerning behavior. The recordings are still suspicious and, actually, Ms. Johnson interrupted again, I had those recordings analyzed by an independent audio forensics expert, not someone related to the family. She glanced pointedly at Derek, who suddenly found the floor very interesting. They're authentic. No signs of manipulation or editing. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Tony, were you aware that your expert witness was a family member when you presented him as an objective professional? Uncle Tony's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He has legitimate IT credentials. That's not what I asked. Were you aware he was related to your clients? Yes, Your Honor. And you didn't think that was relevant information to disclose? The courtroom fell silent. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah had started crying quietly in her seat in the gallery. The judge turned back to Ms. Johnson. What else did your investigation uncover? A pattern of parentification dating back to when Lisa was 6 years old. Multiple witnesses from the children's schools have confirmed that Lisa was often the one attending parent-teacher conferences, signing permission slips with her parents' consent, and handling medical appointments for the younger children. She pulled out more documents. I also discovered that Lisa's college scholarship was withdrawn due to missed deadlines that occurred while she was caring for a sick infant. The same infant her parents claimed they were paying professional childcare to watch. The judge reviewed the papers, his frown deepening with each page. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to ask you directly. Have you been collecting government assistance for childcare while forcing your eldest daughter to provide that care for free? My mother looked at my father. My father looked at Uncle Tony. Uncle Tony looked defeated. Your Honor, my mother finally said, her voice small. We were just doing what our parents did. This is how families work. The oldest daughter helps with the babies. It's tradition. Tradition doesn't override the law, Mrs. Martinez, nor does it excuse welfare fraud. The judge turned to me. Lisa, do you have anything you'd like to add? I stood on shaky legs. I just wanted to go to college. I worked so hard for that scholarship. I love my siblings, but I wanted a chance at my own life. When I tried to leave, they called social services and claimed I was neglectful. They changed the locks. They got a restraining order based on lies. I've been sleeping in my car and then at a shelter because my own parents made me homeless for wanting an education. She's being dramatic, my father started, but the judge cut him off with a sharp gesture. Mr. Martinez, I've heard enough. Ms. Johnson, what are your recommendations? Given the evidence of financial fraud and the systematic parentification of Lisa, I recommend a full investigation by the Department of Social Services. I also recommend that the restraining order against Lisa be immediately vacated as it appears to have been obtained under false pretenses. The judge nodded. I'm inclined to agree. I'm also ordering a forensic accounting review of the Martinez family finances. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, you should be aware that welfare fraud is a criminal offense that can result in prosecution. My parents went white. Uncle Tony started gathering his papers, clearly wanting to distance himself from the situation. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering temporary custody of the minor children to remain with the parents under strict supervision from social services. Lisa, you are not to be required to provide any childcare. Any violation of this order will result in immediate removal of the children. But who will watch them? My mother cried. We can't afford. Perhaps you should have thought of that before committing fraud with the money meant to pay for childcare, the judge said coldly. Court is adjourned. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, do not leave the state. You'll be notified of the criminal investigation proceedings. The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. My parents sat frozen, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. They'd tried to trap me, but had trapped themselves instead. Outside the courthouse, Ms. Johnson pulled me aside. Lisa, I know this is overwhelming, but you should know that the forensic accountant will likely find more than just the childcare fraud. If your father has been claiming you as a dependent while you were working, that's tax fraud too. I nodded numbly. What happens now? Now you focus on rebuilding your life. The restraining order will be vacated within 24 hours. You can return home to get your belongings. I'll arrange for a police escort if you'd prefer. I don't want to go back there, I said quickly. Not to live. I just want my things. That's understandable. Do you have somewhere to stay? The shelter has space for another week. After that, I shrugged. Without my job, I had no idea what I'd do. Ms. Johnson handed me a business card. This is a transitional housing program for young adults escaping family family abuse. Tell them I sent you. They can help with housing and job placement. I took the card with trembling hands. Thank you for everything. If you hadn't investigated, you can thank your sister, she said. Sarah didn't just have recordings. She had a diary going back 2 years documenting everything. Times, dates, specific incidents. That's what prompted me to dig deeper into the finances. My heart swelled with gratitude for Sarah. She'd been braver than any of us realized. As I walked away from the courthouse, my phone buzzed with text after text. Family members who'd been at the hearing were already spreading the news. Some were angry, calling me a traitor. Others were shocked about the fraud. Grandma Helen sent a particularly nasty message about ungrateful children who didn't understand sacrifice. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. Their opinions didn't matter anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. True to Ms. Johnson's word, the restraining order was vacated. I went back to the house with a police escort to get my belongings. My parents weren't there, but Sarah was. She flew into my arms the moment she saw me. I'm so sorry. They made me say those things. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd send the little ones away. It's okay, I said, holding her tight. You were so brave. Ms. Johnson told me about your diary. I started it when you got your scholarship, she admitted. I knew they'd try to stop you. I wanted to make sure there was proof of what they put you through. We packed my things quickly. My acceptance letter to community college was still in my chemistry book. My hidden money was still in the tampon box, untouched. Small miracles. What's going to happen to us? Sarah asked as we loaded boxes into the police officer's car. I don't know, I said honestly. But whatever happens, I'll make sure you and the kids are okay. I promise. She nodded, trying to be brave. Maybe now Mom and Dad will actually have to take care of their own children. The thought was almost laughable. They'd never had to before. But with social services watching and criminal charges looming, they wouldn't have a choice. I moved into the transitional housing program the next week. It was a small apartment shared with 2 other young women escaping family situations. We each had our own bedroom and shared the common areas. It was clean, safe, and most importantly, mine. The program also helped me find a new job at a different grocery store across town, far from my father's construction connections. The manager there was understanding about my situation and flexible with scheduling around my community college classes. Yes, I'd decided to still go. The acceptance was still valid, and with financial aid and my new job, I could make it work. It wouldn't be the university scholarship I'd dreamed of, but it was still a step forward. 2 weeks after the hearing, the other shoe dropped. My parents were formally charged with welfare fraud and tax evasion. The forensic accountant had found exactly what Ms. Johnson predicted: years of false claims totaling over $30,000. Uncle Tony refused to represent them, citing conflict of interest. They had to use a public defender. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd claimed I didn't qualify for legal aid, but now they needed it themselves. Sarah kept me updated through carefully worded texts. Our parents were panicking. They'd been ordered to pay back all the fraudulent claims plus penalties. The house might have to be sold. My father's construction boss had cut his hours after hearing about the charges. My mother had been suspended from the dental office pending the outcome of the criminal case. For the first time in their lives, they were having to actually parent. No eldest daughter to dump the work on. No government money to collect while someone else did the job. Sarah said the house was chaos. The younger kids didn't understand why I wasn't there to make breakfast or help with homework. My parents were overwhelmed within days. Mom actually had to change a diaper yesterday, Sarah texted me one evening. She acted like it was the end of the world. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad for my siblings who were confused and scared. Sad that it had come to this. Even a little sad for my parents, who were so trapped in their own upbringing they couldn't see how wrong it was. The family reaction was swift and brutal. Grandma Helen called an emergency family meeting that I obviously wasn't invited to. Sarah reported back that it was a disaster. Half the family thought my parents were victims of an ungrateful daughter. The other half were quietly admitting they'd seen the signs but hadn't wanted to get involved. Cousin Maria stood up and said she went through the same thing, Sarah told me during one of our phone calls. She said Grandma Helen made her raise her 5 younger siblings too. Then Aunt Rosa said it happened to her. Suddenly everyone was arguing about whether it was tradition or abuse. The family was fracturing along generational lines. The older generation insisted it was just how things were done. The younger generation was starting to question why it was always the eldest daughters who sacrificed everything. 3 months into the criminal proceedings, my parents did something desperate. They fled. I was in my evening statistics class when my phone started buzzing. I ignored it until I saw it was Ms. Johnson calling. I stepped out into the hallway to answer. Lisa, your parents missed their court date this morning. They've also pulled the younger children out of school. We believe they're attempting to leave the state. My blood ran cold. What about Sarah? She's the one who alerted us. She's safe at school right now. She said your parents packed up the van last night and told the kids they were going on a surprise vacation. I sank onto a bench in the hallway. They were really going to run. Take the kids and disappear, rather than face the consequences of their actions. What can I do? I asked. Stay where you are. Don't try to intervene. We've notified state police and issued an Amber Alert for the children. Sarah said she overheard them talking about going to stay with relatives in Texas. Of course. My father had cousins there who probably had no idea about the charges. They could disappear into another big family where eldest daughters raising siblings was just normal life. I went back to class but couldn't concentrate. My professor noticed my distress and quietly told me I could leave if I needed to. I gathered my things and drove back to my apartment, my hands shaking the entire way. The next few hours were the longest of my life. I sat by my phone, waiting for updates. My roommates made me tea and sat with me, sharing their own stories of family dysfunction. It helped, knowing I wasn't alone. Finally, around midnight, Ms. Johnson called. We found them. State police stopped them at a gas station about 2 hours from the Texas border. Everyone is safe. I sobbed with relief. What happens now? Your parents are being arrested for custodial interference and violating their bond conditions. The children are being placed placed in emergency foster care until we can determine the best placement. What about Sarah? She's 18 in 2 months. We're looking into emergency emancipation so she can maintain some independence. Lisa, I need to ask, would you consider taking temporary guardianship of your siblings? The question I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. I don't know if I can. I'm barely managing to support myself. I understand. It's not a decision you need to make tonight, but think about it. Foster care isn't ideal, and you're the only family member who's shown genuine concern for their well-being. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room thinking. I'd fought so hard to escape the role of surrogate mother. The thought of voluntarily taking it on again made me feel sick, but the thought of my siblings scattered across foster homes made me feel worse. I called Sarah. She answered on the first ring, sounding exhausted. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm at the police station. They're being really nice. They gave me hot chocolate. Ms. Johnson said they're looking into emancipating you early. Yeah, she mentioned that. Sarah paused. She also asked if I thought you'd take the kids. What do you think I should do? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I think you should do whatever keeps you safe and healthy. You've sacrificed enough for this family. But, she trailed off. But maybe we could do it differently. Together. Not like before where you did everything, but like actual sisters helping each other. I could get a part-time job. We could apply for assistance, the legal kind. Make sure the kids get therapy to deal with everything. Break the cycle for real. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. It would mean giving up the dorms, finding a bigger place, putting some dreams on hold again, or maybe just dreaming differently, Sarah said softly. College during the day, homework help at night, soccer practice and PTA meetings, normal family stuff, but where everyone pitches in, where the kids see what a real family looks like. She was painting a picture I'd never dared imagine. A family where responsibility was shared, where love didn't mean sacrifice, where we could heal together. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course, but Lisa, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. You stood up to them. You broke free. That took more courage than any of us had. The next morning, I met with Ms. Johnson and a family court advocate. They laid out what temporary guardianship would entail. Financial assistance was available. The kids would get counseling. Sarah would be emancipated and could be a co-guardian. We'd have support from social services. Your parents will likely get prison time, the advocate explained. 2 to 3 years based on the charges. The kids need stability during that time. Foster care can provide that, but family placement is always preferred if it's healthy. I thought about my siblings. The 8-year-old who'd stopped talking to me after our parents' manipulation. The twins who were probably so confused. The baby who'd called me mama before I taught him my real name. What about Grandma Helen? I asked. Won't she try to get custody? Ms. Johnson shook her head. She's been deemed unfit due to her age, and the fact that she knew about the parentification and encouraged it. Several family members have come forward with their own stories after your case became known. She's facing her own investigation now. The dominoes were falling throughout the family. The secret everyone had kept for generations was finally in the light. If I say yes, I said slowly, I need guarantees. The kids get therapy. Sarah and I get family counseling to learn how to do this right. Financial support for housing and childcare. Real childcare, not me missing classes. And help navigating college with this responsibility. All of that can be arranged, the advocate assured me. We want this to succeed if you choose to do it. The goal is to break the cycle, not perpetuate it. I asked for one more day to decide. That evening, I sat with my roommates and talked it through. They'd both escaped abusive families and understood the weight of what I was considering. The question is, one of them said, can you live with either decision? If you take them, can you handle the responsibility without losing yourself? If you don't, can you handle the guilt? It was a fair question. I'd spent so long being forced into motherhood that I didn't know if I could choose it freely. But maybe that was the point. This time, it would be a choice. That night, I made a list. Pros and cons. Dreams deferred versus siblings scattered. The life I'd planned versus the family I could build. By morning, I had my answer. I called Ms. Johnson. I'll do it, but only with Sarah as co-guardian and all the support we discussed. I'll start the paperwork. Lisa, I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not just for taking this on, but for setting boundaries and asking for help. That's what breaking the cycle looks like. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Court hearings for guardianship, apartment hunting with a social worker, meetings with the kids' teachers and counselors, setting up therapy schedules, learning about trauma-informed parenting. My parents' criminal trial was set for the following month. They were being held without bail after the flight attempt. I hadn't spoken to them since the first hearing, and I didn't plan to. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. The day I got guardianship was surreal. The judge made it clear this was temporary, pending my parents' criminal trial and sentencing. But for now, I was legally responsible for my siblings. This time, with support and resources, and my own choice backing it up. Sarah and I moved into a 4-bedroom apartment subsidized by the Family Assistance Program. It was in a better school district, close to both my community college and Sarah's high school. We spent a weekend painting bedrooms and assembling furniture, trying to make it feel like home. The kids were brought over on a Tuesday afternoon. They looked shell-shocked, clutching garbage bags of hastily packed belongings. The 8-year-old wouldn't meet my eyes. The twins hid behind the social worker. The toddler reached for me instinctively, then pulled back, confused. Hey guys, I said, kneeling to their level. I know this is scary and confusing, but Sarah and I are going to take care of you for a while, okay? This is your new home. Why can't we go home? One of the twins asked. Because mom and dad made some bad choices and have to face consequences, Sarah said gently. But we're going to be okay, all of us together. It wasn't easy. The first week was rough. Tantrums and tears and questions I didn't know how to answer. The 8-year-old finally broke down and admitted our parents had told him I was trying to steal them away. It took patient explanation from his therapist to help him understand the truth. But slowly, we found a rhythm. Sarah and I split the morning routine. I handled breakfast while she got the little ones dressed. We hired a real babysitter for the hours between school and when one of us could be home. The kids did homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner. Sarah helped with baths and bedtime while I studied. It wasn't the college experience I'd dreamed of. No dorm parties or late-night study sessions in the library. But it was real. It was mine. It was ours. The community college professors were understanding about my situation. Several had been through similar experiences and offered extensions when family court dates conflicted with exams. My grades stayed strong, even with the chaos at home. 3 months into our new arrangement, something beautiful happened. I was making dinner when the toddler tugged on my shirt. "Lisa," he said, using my actual name. "Can I help?" I handed him a wooden spoon to stir the pot, keeping my hand over his to guide him. "Good job, buddy. I love you, Lisa," he said matter-of-factly, then toddled off to play with his blocks. Sarah caught my eye from across the kitchen where she was helping with math homework. We both had tears in our eyes. This was what love was supposed to look like. Not obligation or tradition or guilt, just choice and care and building something better. My parents' trial began the following week. Sarah and I agreed to keep the kids home that day, not wanting them to see their parents in orange jumpsuits and shackles. But we watched the news coverage that night after they were asleep. Both parents pleaded guilty to reduce charges in exchange for lighter sentences. 2 years for the fraud, 3 years probation after. They'd have to pay restitution and attend parenting classes if they wanted any chance of regaining custody after release. "Do you think they'll try?" Sarah asked as we turned off the TV. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe prison will change them. Maybe they'll realize what they lost. Or maybe they'll come out angry and try to go back to how things were. We'll be ready either way," Sarah said firmly. "The kids are in therapy. We're documenting everything. We're doing this right." She was right. We had 2 years to establish a stable, healthy home. 2 years to help the kids heal. 2 years to prove that the cycle could be broken. I thought about the scholarship I'd lost, the dorm room I'd never sleep in, the traditional college experience that had slipped away. But sitting in our living room, listening to Sarah quiz herself for a history test while I worked on calculus problems, I realized I hadn't lost my dreams. They'd just taken a different shape. I was still going to graduate, still going to transfer to a 4-year university. It would take longer, be harder, require more juggling, but I'd have something else too. A family I'd chosen to build, siblings who knew they were loved without conditions, a sister who stood beside me as an equal partner. The cycle our grandmother had perpetuated, that our mother had continued, stopped with us. Sarah and I would make mistakes, certainly, but we'd never tell the kids that sacrifice was love. We'd never make them choose between their dreams and their family. We'd show them that both were possible, with help and boundaries and the courage to do things differently. As I closed my textbook for the night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for my own future, but for all of ours. We were writing a new story, one page at a time. The sentencing hearing arrived faster than expected. Sarah and I sat in the back row, watching our parents stand before the judge in their orange jumpsuits. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by months of legal proceedings and the weight of their choices. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. $32,000 in fraudulent welfare claims, 8 years of tax fraud, child endangerment through parentification, custodial interference, flight to avoid prosecution. Each charge carried its own penalty. My mother's public defender tried to argue for leniency, citing their difficult upbringing and financial hardship, but the judge wasn't having it. She'd reviewed all the evidence, including Sarah's diary and the recordings that Derek had tried to discredit. "Mr. and Mrs. Martinez," the judge said, her voice stern, "you systematically exploited your eldest daughter for nearly a decade. You collected government funds meant for her care while forcing her to provide that care herself. When she tried to pursue education, you sabotaged her opportunities. When she sought independence, you used the legal system to punish her." My father's jaw clenched. My mother stared at the floor. "I'm sentencing you each to 24 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution of $32,000 plus penalties. Upon release, you must complete a court-approved parenting program before any consideration of custody restoration." The gavel came down. My parents were led away without looking back at us. I felt Sarah's hand slip into mine, squeezing tight. Outside the courthouse, Ms. Johnson met us with paperwork. "The permanent guardianship hearing is next month. Given your parents' sentences and the stability you've provided, I expect it to go smoothly." That afternoon, I picked up the kids from school. The 8-year-old Marcus had started talking to me again after months of therapy. The twins, Rosa and Elena, ran to the car chattering about their art projects. Little Gabriel, now 3, insisted on showing me the dinosaur sticker his teacher had given him. "Where were you and Sarah this morning?" Marcus asked as we drove home. I'd learned honesty worked better than evasion. "We were at court. Your mom and dad got their sentences today." "How long?" His voice was small. 2 years. "But you'll be able to visit them if you want to, when they're ready." He nodded, processing this. "Will we still live with you?" "As long as you need to. Sarah and I aren't going anywhere." That evening, while Sarah helped with homework and I prepared dinner, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Lisa Martinez?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "Yes, this is Victoria Chen from the County Community Foundation. We received your application for the Returning Student Scholarship. I'm pleased to inform you that you've been selected as one of this year's recipients." I nearly dropped the phone. I'd applied on a whim, encouraged by my English professor who'd noticed my situation. The scholarship would cover my remaining community college expenses and help with the transfer to a 4-year university. The committee was particularly moved by your essay about breaking generational cycles while maintaining family bonds. Victoria continued, "The award ceremony is next week if you're able to attend." After hanging up, I stood in the kitchen, overwhelmed. Sarah noticed first. "What's wrong?" she asked, abandoning the math worksheet. "Nothing's wrong. I got the scholarship, the one Professor Martinez told me about." Sarah squealed and hugged me tight. The kids looked up from their activities, confused but catching our excitement. "Does this mean you're going away?" Gabriel asked, his lower lip trembling. I knelt down to his level. "No, buddy. It means means I can finish school here and then go to a bigger school nearby. I'll still be home every night. The scholarship ceremony was small, held in the community college library. 20 returning students, each with their own story of perseverance. I wore my best dress, the one I'd bought secondhand for court appearances. Sarah and the kids sat in the front row, Gabriel waving enthusiastically every time I looked their way. When they called my name, I walked to the podium on shaky legs. The scholarship coordinator handed me the certificate and an envelope containing the first installment. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to stop worrying about choosing between textbooks and groceries. Enough to hire a reliable babysitter for evening classes. Enough to believe that dreams deferred weren't always dreams denied. 2 weeks later, Grandma Helen died. The call came from Aunt Rosa, her voice carefully neutral. The funeral is Saturday. You should know that some family members don't think you should come. I understand, I said, and I did. The family fracture that had started with my case had never healed. Half of them still believed I'd destroyed a sacred tradition. The other half had started questioning everything they'd been taught about family obligations. Sarah and I discussed it that night after the kids were asleep. I want to go, she said. Not for her, but for closure, to see that it's really over. We arranged for the kids to stay with a respite care family for the day. The funeral was held at the same church where I'd been baptized, where I'd spent countless Sundays wrestling with younger siblings while my parents dozed in the pew. The reception hall was thick with tension. Conversation stopped when we entered. Some relatives turned their backs. Others nodded acknowledgement. Cousin Maria approached first, her own eldest daughter at her side. I've been thinking about what you did, she said quietly. My Isabella is 15 now. I've been making her help with her siblings the same way. She trailed off, glancing at her daughter. We're going to do things differently. One by one, other cousins approached, some to condemn, others to confess their own struggles. The generational divide was stark. The older relatives spoke of duty and sacrifice. The younger ones whispered about dreams abandoned and childhoods lost. Uncle Tony cornered me near the coffee station. You destroyed this family, he said, his voice low and venomous. Your parents are in prison because of you. They're in prison because they committed fraud, I replied calmly. I just told the truth. He stormed off, but not before I caught the doubt in his eyes. Even he was beginning to question the narrative he'd helped construct. As we left, I noticed Derek standing by his car, looking uncomfortable. He approached hesitantly. Lisa, I need to apologize. What I did in court, lying about those recordings. My mom pressured me, said family comes first, but he shrugged helplessly. I've got a daughter now. Made me think about what kind of family traditions I want to pass on. I nodded, not offering forgiveness, but acknowledging his words. Some bridges could be rebuilt. Others were better left as rubble. The permanent guardianship hearing went smoothly, as Ms. Johnson had predicted. Our parents didn't contest it, perhaps finally understanding that their choices had consequences. The judge praised the stable home Sarah and I had created, noting the children's improved school performance and emotional well-being. Spring semester brought new challenges. I'd registered for 18 credits, determined to graduate on time despite everything. Sarah juggled her senior year of high school with part-time work at a local bakery. We tag-teamed childcare duties with military precision, our shared calendar color-coded and constantly updated. The hardest part was helping the kids process their trauma. Marcus had nightmares about being taken away again. The twins wet the bed when stressed. Gabriel clung to us constantly, afraid we'd disappear like his parents had. Their therapist, Dr. Cassandra Williams, became our lifeline. She taught us about trauma responses and attachment repair. Slowly, painfully, we learned to be the stable, predictable presence the kids needed. Healing isn't linear, she reminded us during one particularly difficult week when Marcus had refused to go to school, and the twins had been caught stealing snacks to hide in their room. They're testing whether you'll abandon them when things get hard. We didn't abandon them. We showed up day after day, even when exhaustion made our bones ache and stress gave us matching tension headaches.